Imagine a ruler so ruthless, he torched his own villages just to starve and terrify one of the most powerful armies in the world. According to me, this is where history gets chilling. Vlad the Impaler didn't just fight battles, he turned cruelty into strategy. And honestly, you won't believe how far he went.
There is a great need for a man of your talent to fight Mehmed.
Who will lead this mighty Christian army against me? Surely this ruler has a name.
And here's where it gets even stranger. Instead of meeting Mehmed II's army head-on, Vlad burned down his own land. Yeah, you heard that right. He destroyed his own people's homes, fields, and food. In the spring of 1462, Sultan Mehmed II marched into Wallachia with nearly 90,000 men, but instead of supplies or shelter, they found ash, poisoned wells, and empty granaries. Vlad had ordered everything stripped or destroyed, livestock driven away, crops burned, villages evacuated. It wasn't mindless cruelty. It was a strategy. Vlad knew he couldn't take on the Ottomans in open battle. His only chance was to make the land itself an enemy. In a letter to Matthias Corvinus of Hungary, Vlad wrote coldly, "I have killed peasants, men and women, old and young. We have burned down everything." That document, still preserved today in the Hungarian National Archives, shows how unapologetically he explained this campaign of devastation. And it worked. The Ottomans were starving, disoriented, and constantly sick. Soldiers deserted, not because of defeat on the battlefield, but because of fear, hunger, and exhaustion. Just think about it. What's scarier, fighting a visible army or walking into a wasteland where the very ground seems cursed against you? Would you have had the stomach to keep marching if every step forward meant deeper into death? But wait, it's about to get way more shocking. Mehmed's troops advanced deeper into Wallachia, and they finally reached the fortress city of Târgoviște. And what they saw there left even hardened warriors trembling. Before the gates stood a massive display, thousands of human bodies impaled on wooden stakes. This wasn't random slaughter. Vlad had arranged them in deliberate rows, forming what chroniclers later called a forest of the impaled. Imagine walking into a battlefield where the trees are people. Ottoman prisoners, captured scouts, and even envoys sent by Mehmed himself, all raised in grotesque symmetry. The Saxon Chronicle from Brașov tells one especially brutal story. Mehmed once sent messengers to Vlad, who refused to remove their turbans out of religious custom. Vlad's response: "Then let them be nailed to their heads in respect of their customs." And he had them impaled with turbans still attached. Venetian ambassadors, Ottoman chroniclers like Tursun Bey, and Saxon accounts all confirm how calculated this was. It wasn't just execution, it was theater, a performance of fear. When Mehmed saw the forest, he reportedly halted his advance. Think about that, a conqueror of Constantinople, shaken to his core by the sight of Vlad's handiwork. And honestly, who wouldn't be? Imagine marching for weeks, only to be welcomed by a city surrounded by death, staring at you from sharpened stakes. What would you have done? Kept fighting, or turned back before you became the next figure in Vlad's twisted forest? And just when you think Vlad couldn't get darker, here comes his most infamous weapon: impalement. Now let's be clear, Vlad didn't invent this method. Different empires, even the Ottomans themselves, had used it before. But Vlad? He perfected it. He turned impalement into both punishment and performance. The process was horrifying. A wooden stake, sharpened but rounded at the tip, was driven through a victim's lower body, exiting through the chest, back, or even mouth. And here's the sick part: it wasn't quick. Vlad's men made sure the stake was shaped in a way that slowed down death. Victims could suffer for hours, sometimes even days, hanging there alive, displayed for everyone to see. In 1462, as Sultan Mehmed II's forces pushed toward Târgoviște, Vlad staged his most terrifying show yet. chroniclers like Lanikos Chakakandiles describe how nearly 20,000 Ottoman prisoners were impaled outside the city in perfect formations, an entire forest of bodies. Even Mehmed himself, the conqueror of Constantinople, stopped in his tracks at the site. He supposedly said, "One cannot defeat a man who does such things to his enemies and his own people alike." And yes, Vlad used this same terror at home. Theft, dishonesty, betrayal, even small crimes could end in impalement. Saxon chroniclers tell of a woman executed this way simply for lying about her husband's labor. To Vlad, mercy wasn't justice. Fear was. It's hard to even imagine walking through a land where every road could lead to rows of the dead, hanging silently on stakes. What would you have done if you lived under Vlad? Obey every rule or risk becoming part of his forest? But here's what blew my mind. Vlad didn't need swords to win battles. He weaponized fear itself. His enemies weren't just fighting soldiers, they were fighting terror. The scorched villages, the impalements, the mutilated prisoners. All of it was designed to attack the mind before the body. Ottoman chroniclers admitted that even hardened veterans, men who had fought brutal campaigns across the empire, were shaken by what they saw in Wallachia. Imagine marching into a country where the enemy doesn't face you directly, but everywhere you turn, death, silence, and corpses watching from stakes. Some soldiers abandoned their posts entirely, not because of wounds, but because of nightmares. Vlad had flipped the script. Instead of fighting an army, the Ottomans were fighting dread itself. Think about it. What's more powerful than making your enemy want to surrender before the battle even begins? That's psychological warfare at its deadliest. Would you have had the courage to keep marching, knowing every shadow might hide another horror?
Țara trebuie să crească într-un an cât în 10 ca să intre în rândul lumii. Și voi veniți către prânz?
And just when you think Vlad's cruelty has peaked, he added one final twist. Instead of killing every prisoner, he sometimes spared them. But spared isn't really the word. These captives were maimed, eyes gouged, noses and ears sliced off, and even limbs crippled. They weren't released as acts of mercy. They were turned into walking warnings. Slavic chronicles like the tale of Prince Dracula describe how Vlad even branded some with a hot iron or etched strange symbols into their skin. These weren't just injuries, they were messages, burned into flesh. Some historians think it mocked religious or cultural traditions, aimed directly at humiliating Mehmed II's Muslim soldiers. Imagine what that meant. When these survivors stumbled back into Ottoman lines, they weren't soldiers anymore, they were proof. Proof that Vlad didn't fear the Sultan. Proof that fighting him could cost you more than your life. It could cost your humanity. And here's the psychological dagger. Executions end the story, but living, broken survivors. They carried the terror forward, spreading it through every campfire story and whispered warning. For Mehmed, the conqueror of Constantinople, this wasn't just a challenge, it was an insult. Vlad wasn't just fighting him, he was mocking him. What would have hit you harder, a battlefield defeat, or watching your fellow soldiers return in pieces, carrying Vlad's message carved into their skin? And here's the turning point. Vlad's terror actually stopped one of the most powerful armies on earth. When Mehmed II finally reached Targovishte and saw the forest of the impaled, he halted his advance. Think about that. The man who had taken Constantinople, the heart of the Byzantine Empire, was shaken by a display of corpses. Ottoman morale collapsed. Starving, sick, and terrified, soldiers deserted in droves. They weren't beaten by swords or arrows. They were beaten by fear. Vlad had turned cruelty into strategy, and that is what sets him apart. Other rulers used executions to punish crimes. Vlad used executions to fight empires. His scorched earth tactics, his impalements, his mutilated messengers, all of it reshaped how resistance was remembered in the Balkans. It wasn't random madness. It was a cold, calculated state policy. Vlad understood something simple, yet horrifying. Terror can be more effective than armies. Would you call that genius? Or pure evil?
Și voi duce cu mine.
So how do we remember a man like this? In Romania, Vlad Țepeș is often celebrated as a national hero, a fearless ruler who defended his land against the relentless Ottoman Empire, no matter the cost. His brutality was remembered as strength, his cruelty reframed as necessary resistance to protect his people and sovereignty. For many Romanians, he was not a monster but a shield, a prince who refused to bend, no matter how powerful his enemies became. But step outside Romania and the picture changes. To the Saxons who suffered under his harsh campaigns, and to the Ottomans who faced his merciless warfare, he was no hero at all. He was a monster. Tales spread of forests of the impaled, of unimaginable tortures, of a man who ruled through sheer terror. To them, Vlad was the embodiment of cruelty, a tyrant whose name became synonymous with fear. And centuries later, his legend twisted even further. His name inspired Bram Stoker's infamous Dracula, a creature of nightmares born not from myth, but from real terror. Through this transformation, Vlad Țepeș became immortal, his legacy surviving in the blurred lines of history and horror. Vlad's reign reveals a chilling truth. Cruelty can be rebranded as statecraft. Fear, when wielded carefully, can become a ruler's most effective weapon. And perhaps the most haunting lesson of all is this, that the difference between a hero and a villain is often nothing more than perspective. It depends quite literally on which side of the stake you stood. Vlad the Impaler turned brutality into strategy, scorched villages, forests of stakes, and mutilated survivors. But which tactic do you think terrified the Ottomans the most? Drop your answer in the comments, and if you want more dark history, hit subscribe, because this is just the beginning.